Hi, I'm Dean with English Outfitters, and today we're going to be showing you how to properly field strip and reassemble a 1911. So as many of you may know, the 1911 has a long legacy of performance and reliability in both the military setting and the civilian market. It's a great design, but because it is a little bit older, there's a lot of smaller parts and it's a little bit more intricate in how it fits together and functions, and this makes it a little bit more difficult to take apart and also to reassemble, because with the 1911 there's a couple ways that if you don't know what you're doing you can really mess up the finish on your gun, and while it still will work, it's going to look kind of terrible with this big streak where your slide release comes in. So we're going to show you how to properly disassemble a firearm and then reassemble it without messing anything up. Alright guys, so to start, the 1911 takes apart very similar to other semi-automatic handguns we've looked at, such as the SIG P320 and the Glock 19, and that the slide comes off the front of the frame here, but there's a few more steps we need to attend to in order to make that happen, namely the removal of this bushing and the spring cap off the front of the barrel, and also the removal of our slide stop. So before we do anything, of course, we're going to perform a safety check. You can see there's nothing in the gun there, and we have an empty magazine that is now out of the firearm. So like I said, before we do anything, we need to remove this bushing. Now this is just a piece of steel circle cut around and fitting around the end of your barrel. And then this little lip here, cut in a U, sits over the cap over your spring and keeps tension on the spring of the whole firearm. So whereas in a Glock you have that contained spring unit, this is just the old school way of doing it. So it's non-contained, the spring floats free. So first thing we're going to do is take this is called a bushing wrench. These are about $5-10, just a piece of polymer with the cutout shape of a bushing. I highly recommend you get one of these because it makes it a lot easier to remove that bushing, and B, easier on your hands, because while I could use my thumb, it doesn't feel too good and it's not as effective as using a wrench. So we're going to tilt the gun up on its rear and support it with our other hand, and take this wrench and just fit it over the end of the barrel. And you can see that little nub there is going to depress our spring cap. We're going to turn it all the way to the left, or the 9 o'clock position of the barrel, and then very slowly, while covering that cap with our thumb, remove the wrench. If you don't capture it with your thumb, it's going to shoot out across the room. I've done it many times, trust me, it's embarrassing. Take that off, and we're going to remove our cap. So as I said, this is not a contained spring unit, so you can see that's floating free there. Now, just with our hands, we're going to take this bushing and rotate it to the opposite, or the 3 o'clock position off the barrel, because there is a little tooth, sorry, not quite the 3 o'clock, but just this angle here, there's a little tooth that we need to get to the very bottom in order to actually get it off the front of the barrel. So when we have it in this position and I can see that little tooth down in this opening where the spring is, I'm going to take it and just bring it out of battery ever so slightly. Now if your gun is tight, it's going to stick a little bit. We're just going to work that around the spring and get that off the end of the barrel. And grab it here real slow. And there's your bushing. Like I said, just a little circle, and then that crescent cut to fit over the end of your spring cap. Now, next problem we have is our slide release, as I said. There are 3 cutouts in your slide. There is the slide stop cutout, which is, of course, where the slide stop fits in, holds your slide open on your empty magazine or for cleaning. There is your safety cutout that your safety will fit up into to make the gun unfireable. And then there's this little crescent cut right there. That is a takedown cutout. So we need to line that up with the top of our slide release in order to get this out, because there's a pin on the slide release going all the way through the gun, and you can see it poking out here. So what we need to do is take this gun and work this all the way back to where that little crescent cutout is just right above that safety release, and then with our finger we're going to depress on the other side there to where it sits flush, and just grab with our fingers, get a good hold on it, and work that right out of the side. And there we have it. You can see the pin that goes through the frame, the slide, and the barrel, and the body of our slide release there. Now, just like any other gun, this is going to come right off the front real easy. Now, one thing to tell you, Through the process of all of that, you will have cocked your hammer. You need to be very careful to stay off the trigger at this point. I always put the gun on safe when it's in the stripped frame configuration, because if just by chance I set that trigger off and release the hammer, you can damage the hammer, the frame, and break your gun, and it's going to cost you a good bit to get it fixed. So we're going to put that on safe and very carefully set it off to the side over here. Now if we look at our slide and put all of our pieces back together, you can see it pretty well looks like a normal semi-automatic slide. The main difference is, like I said, this is not a contained spring, and the barrel is going to come out of the front of the slide. So grab that spring and lift it up and out the back, and then the barrel, there's this little eye or eyelet that your slide release fits through. We're going to put that all the way down so it's out of the way, and we can just lift that out through the front of the slide, and to be very careful, don't want to scratch anything up, and set that down. Folks, there we have it. That is the basic field strip. You can do all the cleaning you should really need to do in this configuration. We have our magazine out, our frame separate from the slide, and then the barrel, spring, and all the smaller parts of the slide out of it. And then, of course, we still have our firing pin and mechanism contained within the body. Now for reassembly. Like most things, it's going to be back from the order we came. So we're going to start by tipping our slide up on its back and replacing our barrel in through the front, just like so, and then slide it back until it fits into battery. And you hear that little click. Now we're going to put that eyelet back up so that it lines up with our barrel, and take our spring and feed it through the hole here. Now one thing you will see, the spring has a little crescent cut right here on the bottom of it, on the plate on the back. That is made to sit against the rounded surface of your barrel. So we're going to take that and make sure it is sitting on the barrel. Make sure everything's in battery, just like so. Now we're going to lay this on its side and grab our frame and fit this onto the rails. Make sure you take your gun back off safe and be very careful with that trigger once again. And we're just going to slide this onto the rails like we would any other semi-automatic handgun platform. Now you do have to support that spring because it will fall down. And take this back just very slowly, making sure everything's sitting where it should and fitting properly. Just like that. Now, there are two things you need to line up when reinserting your slide release. There is the hole here, and we talked about that little eyelet on the barrel. That eyelet must sit even with this hole and the hole on the other side of the frame so that that pin for your slide release can fit through. And then we need that crescent cut line back up so we can fit our slide release back in. So first things first, let's get this eyelet lined up. You can accomplish this just by moving your barrel around. Looks like we're pretty close right there, so I'm going to hold that in place. Place the body of my slide release over the trigger guard and insert that pin into the hole, and it should drift right through. Now from here, this is where most people mess up the finish on their gun, because it's very tempting to just move that to the left and push it up under this detent, because that can be a bit of a bear to depress. If you do that, you're going to get this big mark along the trigger guard of your gun, and everyone's going to know you don't know how to reassemble your 1911. We want to avoid that. So I'm going to lift this back up a little bit towards that detent. Now, ideally, you want to go straight down into the hole, but some of these can be very stiff. I've seen guys smack them with a leather mallet to try and seat that below the detent. I have not found the need to do that. All I do is set my slide release back on a bit of an angle, push up to move that detent out of the way, and from there, push straight down until you hear the click of your firearm seating all the way back in, and there it went. Now you can see this is sitting even where on the frame where it needs to be, and we have that little dome on the other side of our slide release. From here, we can put the gun back into battery at the front. Just be very careful, get that seated properly, flush with the back. From here, I like to put my safety on again, just because there's no spring tension anywhere on the slide, so that safety kind of keeps it in battery where I want it while I'm trying to put my bushing back on. tip our firearm back up on its end. First thing we need to do is put this bushing in, so I'll put that over the end of the barrel, keeping that tooth right there like I told you guys. We're going to keep that at the 6 o'clock position on the barrel, so it slides right down in, and then just finagle the spring a little bit until it sits all the way down, and then move it over to the 9 o'clock position so we can put that cap back over the end of our spring and completely reassembly. Again, a little tight, so we're going to push that all the way to the 9 o'clock position. Now from here, you're going to have a good difficulty trying to depress that cap all the way down onto your bushing with this wrench. So I like to put the cap over the end of the spring and use my thumb to depress it down into the frame. Be careful to line it up those holes and depress it all the way down. From here, I take my bushing wrench over the end, be sure to retain that spring, and I rotate this back into place. And I just peek there just a little bit more, and you heard that little click of the spring pushing back into this crescent cut. That completes our reassembly. So here we can function check, cycles all the way back, dry fire, slide stops working great, so is our safety. That completes our reassembly of the 1911. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel. I'm Dean with Old English Outfitters, and we'll see you next week.